As you work with Perl, over time you're going to come up with a number of functions, a number of routines, a number of pieces of code that you like to use, that work the way that you like them to work, and that you will reuse over and over again. You should put those pieces of code in modules, because that's the unit of reusability that Perl uses. Here's a list of modules. These are some of the modules that I've built over time. And you have in your exercise files here, all of these modules. These are most of the modules that I use in my everyday work in the Perl language. So here we've included a few of them in this file. This is the db.cgi. This is the database management application for the Two Trees website. And in building this application, I reused a lot of code that I've developed over the last 15 years or so. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you some of these modules, not so that you'll use these modules, but rather you'll get the idea that as you learn to work the way that you like to work, and as you come up with code that works the way that you like it to work, that you will build your own module library, and that your module library will look entirely different than my module library. And it'll work the way that you work, while mine works the way that I work. Now, CPAN, the Comprehensive Perl Archive Network, has a number of modules available that do a lot of these same things. You're certainly welcome to use those modules. As you do, you'll find that they all have their own way of doing things. For example, the error reporting, as you use those modules, you'll find that they all have their own way of doing error reporting. So you'll have to find the errors and check the return codes of all of these different functions in umpteen different ways. And you may find that frustrating, as I have. And so a lot of times, like in the case of this DB module, I've simply taken a library of modules from CPAN. In this case, that would be the DBI library. And I've just wrapped my own code around it so that it works the way that I like it to work. Their functionality is great, it's reliable, it's bug-free, it's pretty much the standard way of interfacing with databases in Perl. And yet I would like those error reporting to be the way that I do error reporting. I'd like the way that it passes data to be the way that I like to pass data, so that all of my code, when I'm building an application like this, I can do in 500 lines what it might otherwise take me 1,000 or several thousand lines of code to do if I have to use all of these disparate modules that do things in all of these different ways. And so as you build your portfolio of code in the Perl language, Perl has this great module system. And so I encourage you to use it to build a library of modules that work the way that you work, so that your code can be more efficient and effective. So let's take a look at what some of these things do. Now, all of these modules, if we take a look here at db.pm, they all start with usebase BW base. And so what that does is it takes this base module and it inherits from this base module the common things. For instance, the constructor. I don't need to write this over and over again for each one of my modules. I can write it once and inherit it. This init, which is fairly complex. And what this does is it allows me to pass all kinds of values into my constructor and to build a set of properties for the object. And it uses this generalized setter-getter. There's a common debug method that gets imported by all of my modules. Probably the most powerful thing in this entire library is this simple error reporting, which is these three functions: error, underscore error, which is only used internally, the error without the underscore, which is used for getting the error message, and the check error, which is used from all of my different modules for checking errors as they call each other. It just looks very simple here, but the fact that I have this makes my coding so much easier, because the weakest part of Perl is in its error reporting. Even this is a little bit kludgy, but it works and it's consistent, and I use it across all of my modules, and they all end up working the same way. So let's take a look at the CGI module. This is one of the most common ones that I use. Now, there's a very popular CGI PM that comes with your Perl distribution that most people use. It's very big, it's very complicated, and it does a million different things that, in my opinion, are mostly tangential to CGI. CGI is a small subject. CGI is just a few things. It's about setting a query string. It's about using cookies, setting headers, and it's about displaying the text on the web browser. My CGI module is relatively short. It's about 400 or 500 lines, including the documentation. It just does these few things that your average program needs to do with CGI. And the other things that you might find in the larger CGI libraries, I will have those in other places. Like I have a separate HTML module for like building a select box for forms, and a separate address code module, which simply has data of 2-letter address codes for states and for countries for building the little select boxes. These are the kinds of things that some people tend to pile all into one big module. I like to separate them out so that I only need to include them when I need them. But the point is not for you to do things the way that I like to do them, but for you to find the ways that work for you. As you do that, to build your own module library that works the way that you work. That will result in your being able to build your applications with less code, spending more of your time looking at the logic of the application that you're building, and not having to worry about all of these different ways of doing things, to just be doing things the way that works for you. And then you'll be able to focus your effort more on building reliable and powerful applications using your own library of Perl code that you've collected and reused over the course of your work.